So welcome to Monkey and Frank. My name is Do, my body is Dom. And today I've got returning Lauren, my soul sister Lauren. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Very excited to be back on your show. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Uh, I wanted to continue that journey of your second week in Peru after we left. Um, how was your ceremonies? Like, what was the next ceremony after that? Like your fifth ceremony, I guess. Do you remember them?
Yeah, so the first one, it was pretty gentle. I think um, Sam and I just kept laughing like the entire time. Like we could not control our laughter. We both just felt so like elated and just joyful, and it was so happy, and it was just kind of me falling in love with life again after like a few hard ceremonies the week before. And the first ceremony was great. But the second ceremony with the new group, the energy was just wild in the Maloka that night. Like everyone had a very intense journey. um Me personally, it was like facing all of my anger for my mom that I had just kind of repressed or like tried to avoid feeling, and it all came out at once. And it was the most anger I had ever felt, and the most, uncontrollable anger. Anger is an emotion that I always tried to kind of repress, mostly because anytime I had seen people express their anger, it was volatile, it was aggressive, it was scary, and I never wanted to be that person. I never wanted to be out of control, and I never wanted to like hurt someone like that, and I never wanted to, act like that. So I was really scared of my own anger and like feeling out of control in any kind of way. So ayahuasca was like, well, if you're not going to let yourself feel it on your own, I'm going to make you feel it. And that night it was like uncontrollable anger for my mom, where I I actually thought that like I had no choice in this life except to kill my own mother. Like I thought that was where my life was headed. I saw myself in prison in like my 50s, and I had long gray braids, and I was really just kind of hideous, and um just like a someone who'd never um tried to feel their emotions, and it just kind of boiled over. And in this trip I had really thought that that was my life path, and I was just trying to like beg my higher self, like, don't let me become this, don't let me become this. And it was like, nope, it's already happened, like this is it. And the whole time I was just like saying, I hate you, like I hope you fucking die. And I don't feel that way now about my mom, and like at my core I didn't think that I had that much anger for her. But in this trip it was like so much repressed anger, that it all like piled on until that's what happened. And ayahuasca was like, if you don't express your anger, if you don't let yourself feel these things, it will become uncontrollable. Like you will have to feel it if you don't work on, feeling yourself, and or allow yourself to feel it. Like you will be forced to eventually. And seeing myself in prison was kind of like the human embodiment of, you know repressed emotions and just like being out of control with it, I guess. um so that trip I was just screaming in the Baloka, I hope you fucking die.
Really?
And yeah, and Harsh came over to me and was like, are you okay, like can I help you with anything? um and like after that, it was kind of like a back to reality. Okay, I didn't already kill my mom, I'm fine. And Harsh
Right.
brought
Uh, I've got questions about that.
yeah.
So, was it because I'm kind of struggling with that? I'm just going to share a little bit about because I was an angry teenager, and I was an angry kind of kid. And when I got to Peru and I did the Sapo, and it's weird, like I released all of my frustration, but in a different way. And the thing is that I'm really confused about that right now on how to get that anger out the right way, I guess. And did you like did you when you went through that phase with your mother in the Maloka, did mother or did you find a like I don't know how to explain it, but is there a proper way to release anger and a non-proper way? Because that it's been so confusing in my life, knowing that I've been so angry all my life, and it was because I was not looking, I guess, at my frustration full on somehow, but yet I was like I am angry all the time
Yeah.
when I'm afraid, but yet I'm not releasing it the right way, and I don't know how to fuck to release it, and it's bothering me because I'm hurting the people closest to me still.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think there's any perfect way to feel your emotions. Heavy emotions like anger are always going to feel, hard in that moment. But I think the best way to release it is in a way that you acknowledge it. You validate it. You don't say, I'm not feeling this. I'm in the wrong for feeling this. You say, no, I am feeling this. Validate yourself. And I think talking about it, if you're angry at somebody or with somebody's actions, validate your feelings about it, but also have that conversation with them instead of letting it boil over. But
But
for me, sorry, what?
that person is myself. Like I'm angry at
Okay.
myself. Like I'm so angry at myself. I think I know where you're going with that though. So
I
continue.
think
Yeah, with you.
um if when I'm angry at myself, it's like a deep rooted shame. And shame and guilt are like the heaviest vibration, like frequency that you can have. And for me, my guides actually so as I was like falling asleep the other night, it was like I instantly got kind of like transported into this journey. And my guides brought me to this lake, my mom's lake, actually, like the where she lives. But there was no houses around. The lake was totally still, no boats or anything. And my guides were like, walk into the lake, and with every step you take into this water, like it's going to fill you up with light, and your shame will like bleed into the water. And it was like every step I took, my body was being filled up with light, and I could feel where I was holding shame in my body. I held like a lot of shame and guilt in my ankles and tension in my knees, and it was like all of my anger towards myself was just shame. um, and in order to like move past that, you have to let go of your shame to be able to forgive yourself, face it head on. This is just like, I can't tell you the proper way to do it. This is just kind of how I was being guided to do it. But look at that shame and like understand that nobody's a perfect human, because to be human is it's to be flawed. We're here to learn lessons. We're not here to be perfect. We're not here to be, our divine higher self. We're here to learn. And so like when you realize that every piece of anger you hold for yourself, every piece of shame and guilt, it's a lesson. It's you were here to learn that lesson, and like your purpose like on earth or to learn these things. And like every time we feel shame, every time we feel guilt, it's just another lesson. And so to forgive yourself is just forgive yourself for having a human experience. Like we can't make the perfect decision in every moment, because we wouldn't be learning then. If we made no mistakes, we wouldn't be here.
100%.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm holding my shame in my heart space. That's what it feels like. And there's a great sadness in there.
Mm.
Hmm. Well, that's cool. So continue your story of so after it was done, the screaming, like you were actually screaming in the Maloka, like straight up, I
Yes.
hate you, I want to kill you.
Yes. And that's, I'm a pretty, kind of
Yes.
quiet gal.
Yes.
um, and it was just, it scared me really. Like I saw myself turn into like this beast in prison, and I was like, I hate you for making me become that. Um, and not only me, but it was like everyone in the Maloka was dealing with their deepest anger. Like I think everyone was screaming that night. I don't know how the facilitators or the shamans like corralled us. Like it was It was wild. There was just so much being purged that night. But it was like I needed that. I needed that deep purge to get that shame and that guilt out of my heart space. And like it's a process. It was, that was so much anger built up from my mom, and like I released a lot, but it comes in layers, and like a lot of my shame for myself came out that night. And obviously like screaming saying you want to kill someone isn't the best way to release that anger, but it was like I had gone so long without even acknowledging that anger was there, that was like what ayahuasca forced me to do. And like since then it's been doing like for me, like releasing my shame and my guilt has been in like small waves by doing these little like shamanic journeys where I like go into like the water and see my shame and my guilt be washed away, and facing it head on
So
in that way.
can you tell me more about that? Like, how do you call on your guides to come and help you during your dream state or even during the day? Because you seem to be pretty wise when it comes to guides. And I still, other than my daughter, which often, yeah, like I see her as a guide, like whatever she says kind of goes. But at the same time, I often, have to be the parent and say, do this or that. And I feel so much shame about that. But yeah, how does it work in your life when it comes to being able to bring on your guides? Like, is it something that, yeah, tell me about it. I want to know more.
So when I connected with my spirit guides, it was like this feeling of this like energy that I had been feeling my entire life, but I didn't know what to call it. But my first time doing it was I went to like an intro class to shamanic journeying, and the teacher led us through this journey where you go into like a sacred space that you have, whether that's like a nature scene or your bedroom, and you find kind of like this portal and you go through it. And once you're in this space, she like kind of described the landscape for us. I think for ours, it was like in this valley with like plateaus all around, and you could see the sunrise. And she said that you were going to see animals there, and if you saw the same animal 3 times, you would ask it, "Are you my guide?" And I saw this condor 3 times. I asked it; it said yes. And I just talked to it, asked it its name, how long it has like been in my life. And that was kind of like my first real like encounter sober with like an entity like that. Because I had worked with ayahuasca previously, and I had seen her as a snake and ayahuasca to me as a guide. But really like it's a muscle that you kind of have to train doing these journeys to like meet it. And like also when I first started, it was like, is this just my brain imagining it? Am I making this up? And as soon as I was thinking that, the teacher was like, this isn't just your imagination. You need to trust it. Whatever you see, trust it. It's showing up to you for a reason. And the more I kept trusting my intuition of these things that I would see when I was doing guided meditations or journeys, it was like those muscles were being worked. And like the more I did that, the more I could just kind of call on them whenever. And now it's like I have so much trust in it by seeing these things and talking to these different entities that I know it's not just my imagination. And because my brain couldn't like possibly speak like these beings, like it's not how my brain talks. It's not my inner voice. And I was never really like religious growing up. I was definitely spiritual, but I think I turned those things off. But I used to talk to guides and spirits all the time when I was little, and it would really freak me out because I could actually see them. And I think little kids have these gifts, or like kind of everyone does, I believe, and we turn them off like when society is like, oh no, you're just imagining that, like that's not what you're supposed to be doing. We turn these gifts off, and I think it takes so much like relearning and like training our brain to be able to do these journeys. So like personally, I think to start to meet your guides, do a guided meditation, but trust it. Trust your intuition. Trust that it's not just your brain imagining these things, even if it's like a fuzzy picture of a jaguar. Trust it.
Well,
Trust that it's not your imagination.
that's the thing. Like when I'm closing my eyes, like I don't have imagination. Like my imagination is not, there's no color, like it's black. And there's a white gold light and silence. That's it.
Sometimes that light, that orb, is a guide. I would ask it if it has a name, if it is a guide for you. To me, I've always been very clairvoyant, where in my imagination I see pictures, I see things, like I see spirits, I see
Right.
different energies. But for me, it's been so hard to trust my intuition or hear different things where other people have those gifts. And I think they're just things you need to train, really. I mean, if you've been telling yourself your whole life these things aren't real, it's hard to get those gifts back. It's hard to tap into that. So I would just keep practicing with it and like explore that light more, that gold light that you see. And
Well,
if you're just,
I know that that gold light it was, or yeah. So it was mother. So let me tell you a small story that kind of
yeah,
fucked with my world a bit. So for a while now, since I've been silent mind, the only reason why my mind is so quiet and I see that gold light and it's pure, it's just like the Tao. It's because I attribute this light to mother, to this illusion, and I've been talking to it like nonstop, and she's talking back. And the other day she kind of messed with me, and I want to talk to you about that. On is there if you feel fear, well, anyways, let me tell you my story on how she messed with me. So I ordered some, I got scammed online basically. So I ordered some 5-MeO DMT online, and I didn't do it the right way. And then they sent me an email saying, hey, we need money for this, and then we'll be able to send it. And I'm like, ah, that doesn't sound right or whatever. Then I went, but I was scared. Like I remember, like, because I really wanted it, and it was a lot of money, and I was like, oh man, what's going on? Like, am I being scammed? Whatever. And in this fear-based kind of state, I remember closing my eyes, looking at the gold, and I'm like, am I being tricked? What's going on? She's like, just trust. Everything's gonna be fine, just trust. I'm like, okay, I guess. So I went and I paid, and then I realized I got scammed. So I'm like, oh man, I just got scammed a lot of money. And I'm like, so this trust thing that you told me, like, of course I could have interpreted in many ways, like trust. You don't need to have, outside help in order to become spiritual. Like you don't need the medicine, or like, you know what I mean? Like in many
yeah,
ways, but I've been angry for at that voice, at that spirit since, because riddles is not my forte. Like if you're gonna speak to me, like I don't know, like I've just been, and since then I've been more kind of just sending like love towards her and just towards mother and saying thank you. And every time I hear a voice, I can't trust anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna continue worshiping you and trying to do my best, but there's no more like back and forth because I'm ignoring it, because I can't. As your guides played or fucked with you before, or is it because I was in a state of frustration or fear that the ego maybe fucked with me and it was not my guide anymore, or mother, or I don't know. Does that resonate with you?
it does. It does a lot. The first thing that came to mind as you're telling that story is that I think your guides were trying to tell you to trust that it was the right thing that you got scammed. Had you taken that DMT without a shaman with you, you don't know what would have happened. Had you been in your
Right.
house and you went into that gorilla state again without the shamans around, without people to support you, you don't know what would have happened. Trust that whatever happens is in your highest good.
Right.
Rejection is sometimes the universal protection.
Yes. And yes, I did get the feeling as well. But man, like
I know.
felt like such a fool. Like I still feel like such a fool. Like getting scammed for so much money. I was like, fuck, like
Yeah.
I don't need this right now. And I understand. And yes, it's for the greater good, but I, yeah, all right, cool. Like,
Yeah.
and again, I'm still worshiping it. I'm still, and thank you for that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's been many times when my guides have led me to something or made me believe in something, and then later they were like, "Oh, we just wanted you to believe in that so you would learn a different intended message."
Yeah. You're like, fuck.
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate, but man, like those lessons are hard to swallow. Yeah.
Yes. Very hard.
All right. And yes, thank you for, yeah, thank you in many ways.
Absolutely.
All right. So, so tell me about that trip now. So now the screaming and the entire, oh, before we continue, did you switch spot in the second week, or did you stay at the same place that you were?
I did switch spots. I was right by the door, and Sam and I were right next to each other in the second week.
So you were like in Matt's place, read the first one,
Yeah.
basically? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. All right. So is that it for the second ceremony? Like pure rage and or did the plant medicine ayahuasca brought you somewhere else after the screaming?
Um, Honestly, it was pretty much pure rage. And she showed me a bunch of different, horrible things of like my mother doing. And most of them were not true at all. Um, like it showed my mom, like molesting me and my sister, killing someone, which like none of those things have actually happened. Like I can totally like confirm now, like those things did not happen. Um, but like in this journey, I saw like my mom doing horrific things, and it was like I'm still kind of trying to integrate that experience. I don't fully understand why ayahuasca showed me those things yet. I think a lot of it was like, in so many ways, I thought the absolute worst of my mom because she was an alcoholic. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why she would drink. I didn't understand why she would make the choices she would do, or she would make. Um, and so I'm still kind of like digesting why she would show me like the absolute worst. I think it was almost like the juxtaposition of like, well, she could have done these things, it's not as bad. um so I'm still kind of digesting that
Yeah,
experience.
it's almost to what I just said. Like for whatever reason, mother
Yeah.
sometimes gonna make you show something just to not to fuck with you, but to make you feel something that you needed to feel. Like you needed
Yes.
to let that anger, you needed to look at that anger and let's show you the most extreme because
Yeah.
you're not listening. So fuck you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
that's exactly how it was.
yeah. So thank you, mother. We
Thank you,
appreciate.
mom.
Oh my God.
No, and like the rest of that trip, I think I was just like, I just kept seeing myself in prison, and I was like, it was just like rage and sadness, but also like my whole body felt lighter. It was, I'm pretty sure I puked like once, but it was mostly just like an energetic purge where I was like, I can breathe again. I feel like a huge weight had been taken off my chest. And the next day I was still, pretty sad, and I just wanted to be held. Like I just wanted to be hugged. Um, and feel like almost like a motherly protection that I didn't have as a kid.
Yeah.
And but after that, it was like a huge weight had been taken off of me.
That's good.
Yeah.
Did I did I ever tell you about when I puked in my third ceremony?
No.
Right. So check this out. So while I was in Peru, I was a smoker back in the day of cigarettes. And when I got to Peru, I started kind of smoking mapacho here and there because hey, it's spiritual, right? So how about taking advantage? But I could tell and I could see that I was smoking it more because I wanted the nicotine. I was remembering the cigarette and I thought to myself because it's spiritual. So in the third ceremony, when she was teaching me how to learn how to live with my warrior, with the gorilla, whatever that I had put out with the sapo, I had the feeling, oh, she told me right away, like she's like, grab the bucket, you're gonna puke. And so I grabbed the bucket and I start puking and I puked like 3 times hardcore, but at every puke, all I heard was Mapacho, Mapacho. Like after each puke, like as I was puking, it was like Mapacho, Mapacho. I filled up the bucket of brown mapacho kind of liquid, like it smelled like mapacho hardcore. And as soon as I finished puking, Arsh came and took the bucket right away. Like it was so fast, like how quick that was. But like mother again telling me like, see all the mapacho, you thought that I didn't know what the fuck you were doing. Like look at, and it was crazy how insane that was, on how like it made me really believe in spirits, because it was so loud. It was like somebody screaming mapacho in my ears every time that I puked. And I puked like 3 times. I almost filled up the bucket. It was insane. And then after that, my lungs were clear, and like I puked all the pampacho that was inside my body into that bucket for that week. And it was just the most insane thing, one of the most insane thing I've ever experienced. But yeah, that was insane.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
also very beautiful though, that it's just like went right in your system and mother was like, get it out, like just drop it.
Yeah. And I never touched mapacho since, and I would not as
Good.
well. Like it's not for me. It's for the
Yeah.
shamans to bless me with. And because I know myself, like I was a smoker all my life. Nope, not for me. Like it's almost like I abused tobacco for so long
Yeah.
in a suicidal way, because I didn't love myself. I remember like every time I smoked, I knew how scary that was and how much panic it was bringing me, but it was a slow suicide because nothing mattered and I didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to share with you that because that was so spiritual. Like I've
Yeah.
never
Thank you
experienced
for
that.
sharing.
All right. So, what about the seventh ceremony? What happened next? And
um,
and did you do Sapo again?
yeah. So Yoshi actually um donated or like gave me a Zappos ceremony. He paid for it.
Wow,
Because
that's
yeah,
awesome.
that that night that he like needed mine and Morgan's help, he was like, I want to give you this experience. Um and my Sapo experience, it was really beautiful. Well, first my seventh is ceremony because it kind of ties in with it.
Yeah.
Very similar actually to your purging up Mupacho. My entire ceremony was purging of drugs that I had used. It was like almost every ceremony I had with ayahuasca, she was like, get sober. Like you need to stop. Like I had seen a past life where I had OD'd and I died. Um,
How did that
and
feel like?
it was like both devastating and I could feel all that pain. It's honestly, that memory is the most clear memory I have even in this life. I can smell the bathroom I'm in. I can hear the voices. I know who the people are. Like I can feel the bathroom floor, like the tiles. I can feel my body like convulsing and getting cold. Like it's crystal clear in my mind, this memory. And ayahuasca like showed me that memory again. And she was like, understand that the lessons that you are here on earth to learn, like if you don't learn it in one life, you're going to keep repeating it. You are like currently using a lot of drugs that are not safe, and like you're not being responsible. You're going to learn that lesson again. Like you will OD if you don't get sober. Like sobriety for you is a life or death thing. um and in my seventh ceremony, it was like purging all the drugs that I had used. So like for you, when you're throwing up, you're hearing mapacho. It was like every time I would puke, it would be like me throwing up the energy of cocaine, the energy of ketamine, the energy of Molly. It was, like all of the abuse, the like different pills, like
Oh my
mixed with
God.
alcohol. It was
The-
just
When you puked Molly, that must have been the grossest taste in the world. Molly
yeah.
tastes so horrible.
It was just like throwing up all of that, all of the abuse I had done to myself in this life, in my past lives. It was like, get it out, get sober. Um, and I reached my year of sobriety mark on March 4th this year. And I was like, I still have no intent to go back to drugs, but I was like, I think I could try alcohol again. I think like maybe, now that I'm in a better place not to abuse it. And like, I literally just had one glass of wine with my dad and I thought I was going to puke. And it was like,
Really?
it was literally like, this is not for you. You broke that cycle. Don't go back to relearn it. And then when I was on vacation this past week, I had another drink, same thing. And this past week, I heard about 2 people from kind of my past that overdosed and died. And they're 2 people that I wasn't particularly close with, but they're people that I did party with. They were a part of that past. And like, then obviously I didn't know DMX, the rapper, personally, but he also overdosed this week and passed away today. And it was just like, all of these people are like hyper present in my mind right now, because it's like, that could have been me again.
100%. And like
And
fentanyl kind of thing, like, or
yeah, and like, it's just really like hyper present in my mind that like, I can't go back to drugs and alcohol in that way, and I can't have people in my life that are still using. And I had to cut off like one of my best friends this week because they are still using, and I set the boundary, like, you can't be in my life until you're sober. I love you so much, but like, I genuinely can't be there for you right now. Like, I can't be the only one wanting you to heal if you don't want it for yourself. And it's just, and then setting that boundary with someone you love so much after you just heard about 2 other people ODing, it's been a hard week for me for sure. But
yeah,
it's like, I had to break that cycle like once and for all. And I think, once my year of sobriety was up and I went back and tried to like drink, and obviously like I wasn't, abusing drugs in the same way I used to, but it was like tempting fate. It was like, well, if I can do this, and it's like, knowing my personality, I would have been like, oh, well, I could handle alcohol. Maybe I can handle these drugs again. And like, I think it had to be so hyper present this week. Like, that's over. That's done. It needs to be done. Like, if you make the conscious decision to go back to that, you're not going to make it out this time. And so
yeah, I hear you.
that's really, yeah. So that's what this week has been about. But that was really what my 7th ceremony was about too. And ayahuasca has been really calling out to me, and has been like working on my body, for the last like month or 2. And I don't know if I'm going to physically work with her again soon, or if it's just kind of like a refresher course almost. But yeah, that was my 7th ceremony, and that's been this week. And, I think I really need to like recommit to my sobriety, right now, especially.
100%. Does that apply to cannabis as well?
Um, it did when I was, so uh, I was when I first started my year of sobriety, I was off of everything, even caffeine, cannabis, tobacco, everything. And then it was like, gradually I started using like mapachos every once and again, as like ceremonial. And then it started to be, addictive. And
Yeah.
I was just like smoking these cigarettes, but I was like, oh, but it's spiritual.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah. And then I got slapped in the face with that one. So I had to stop that. And then I was like, I think I can integrate caffeine again. I can drink coffee again. And I did that. And I think caffeine is something that I'm always gonna, not always, I don't want to say always. Hopefully one day I will break that. But it's something that like kind of comes and goes in my life, where I'll take like a month off just to prove to myself that I can, and then I'll be back on it. But I was off of cannabis for like 9 months of my sobriety, and then I started again, and I was doing the like marijuana ceremonies, like just alone in my apartment, setting an intention, meditating with it, and they were really, really great and profound, and brought me so much self-love, and I felt so proud of myself. And then I started smoking like recreationally, just with friends,
yeah.
a lot, and it was like, okay, you're not
Serving.
using this medicine anymore. This is just you getting high. Um, and I think that's, important to note. All psychedelics can be super profound and really like help people, but if you don't use them intentionally, you don't use them to help you, they can just be drugs.
100%. Because
Yeah. And
I had quit, sorry, I had quit cannabis for like a month. I had set myself to a month. And then, what was it, last week or the week before? Anyways, April 2nd, I went and did a ceremony with my friend, and I went like I did it the proper way with sage and
Yeah.
intention. We went walking in the wood, and it was as profound as a mushroom trip. Like it was so insanely profound, and how insane, like how present we were. I cried like 4 times. It was like so healing. And I made this because I know me and cannabis, because as soon as I smoked it, I'm like, oh my God, like I love you so fucking much. Like I remember, and I could do this every single day. Um, but I'm setting myself right now the intention of once a month, period.
Yeah.
Like period. And I have to stick to that. And it feels right. It feels like it's something to look forward to in my own life. Yeah, I wanted to share with you because I feel
That's
proud.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you. And you're the first person that really introduced me to like cannabis in a, spiritual and like medicinal way, with the cannabis ceremonies and sitting alone by yourself meditating with it. So I just want to say thank you for
That's
sharing your medicine with
cool.
me.
Yeah, no, well, because it is a super crazy medicine. And when I was doing like, which every time I smoke cannabis, it's very, even if I don't do it ceremony, like it's always ceremonial, but it came to a point where I was, it was all the time. And even though, like I was explaining to my buddy, because right now he's in that phase of smoking every day and he's getting so much wisdom from the plant. But if you don't integrate that wisdom into knowledge by actually living sober and having that wisdom, kind of helping you in the sober life, then you're just accumulating wisdom forever and you
Yeah.
never create knowledge. And then it creates kind of like a separation between you and mother, or you and your body, basically, which is mother for me. And everything goes through that lens of cannabis, and you can't grow that way. Like it, yeah, it
100%.
yeah, it blocks you from like that true knowledge of experiencing and creating knowledge with the wisdom you've created.
Yeah.
And it took me like quitting, becoming sober to realize that. But now that I know it, it's like, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
need to do the work here. And it sucks often, but a lot of the times it feels great when, especially when the lesson hits and you're like, oh, like now I'm sober and I can see the magic. I don't need to have plant medicine to see magic. Like I see it sober, and that's the best gift ever.
Yeah. I think also, overusing psychedelics and you're not integrating it, you're taking out the lessons of human life. You're taking yourself away from reality. And sometimes, you need that escape out of the narrow lens of like your human life. And they can be great tools, but if you're using it all the time and you're just up there kind of in the spirit realm, you miss out on the lessons you're here to learn.
100%, because it's the human body that allows you to learn these things. Like
Yeah.
you're already perfect in the spiritual world. It's okay to to get remembrance from the spirit. But if you're not doing the work with your body, like what's the point? Like
Exactly.
you're just gonna come back over and over again. Like that's not
Hmm.
how you're gonna transcend. And even that word, like it's so paradoxical, because as we're doing the work, we're wanting to transcend the ego, but it's the ego that allows you to transcend anything. So if you're not with the ego 100%, then you're not going to transcend shit.
It's
It's
true.
such a paradox. Yeah. All right. So yeah, continue your story about that. That when you puked the drugs, you could taste them all like one at a time. And did it scream like in your ears, like, or you just knew like, oh, I'm puking MDMA right now, or I'm puking ketamine, or whatever.
Yeah. It was more of a knowing. I think like in my mouth it did taste like that real chemically like nasal drip almost. But it was more a knowing that I was purging all of them. It wasn't like one at a time each puke was,
Right.
this specific drug, but it was, altogether just the energy of that
Yeah.
time period in my life. And right now it's like kind of like coming back up in my life and like, really just like tuning into that, like, you already learned this lesson once, you know, you're not going to keep getting that chance, so like make it stick this time, integrate those things so you don't have to come back and relearn them.
And you're experiencing those lessons from your guides and mother, I'm guessing. Is it mostly like in your dreams or as you're doing daily life sometimes? Like I'm sure you're so connected with, because I'm connected more and more. I'm connected with mother like on the moment by moment basis. Um, so I'm guessing it's all over the place. Like you hear
Yeah,
those, yeah,
it's, you know, a lot of stuff in the dream world, a lot of different symbolic messages, but a lot of it is in, you know, waking life, whether it is like seeing what people from like that part of my life are going through now, or seeing pictures of myself from that time period and like getting that reminder. Like, you know how, like, I don't know if you have Snapchat, but it like it shows you memories of like 2 years ago today, or you
right.
know, and it's like getting those like Snapchat memories on the exact day that like I'm feeling all this stuff is like, oh, that's definitely correlated. I need to, you know, learn that lesson right now. And it's like, you know, these things like come and go. It's not a constant thing on my mind, but it's like, I think every season of my life kind of has a theme. And right now it's like, it's sobriety for sure. And like making sure I like am not wavering in that. And yeah, I mean, I think for my life, I think I will always be connected to plant medicine and maybe use that in ceremony throughout my life. But I don't think I ever want to go back and drink or use anything, you know, in a recreational way. Even like this past week when I would have a drink, it was like I just felt sick. It was no longer recreational. Like the fun aspect of those things is gone for me. So yeah.
Oh, I hear you. Like the biggest thing that she's been showing me lately is one, the food that I'm eating, and two is patience, like at all time, like when I'm driving. So today, when I drive to go and pick up my children and to come back, it's always nice because I get to practice patience and slowing down and trusting that I don't have to get there fast. And so today, as I was following, and I always stay in one lane, I follow the car no matter how slow it is. She's always teaching me, and if I get like the inkling of passing, or I get somebody else, that another energy that comes beside me and is racing, I tend to see it, get attached, and want to follow the other's energy. And then I'm like, whoa, 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 practice, relax, slow down. And I was doing that today. And on the way back, she gave me the opportunity. So I was in the right lane, and there's a van that was going fast, and I could feel it. And I was practicing because he was pulling me to go fast with it. And I kept slowing down. And it's like, no, just look up. But I like it was catching me over and over again. So we get to the red light, and he's on the left lane, I'm on the right. And she gave me kind of an opportunity to where we were side by side. And I know that my car is fast, and I know that I could have like that I could pass him. And but I could tell like that was not the right thing to do, but I still did it anyways. And as soon as I passed him and I went in front of him because the lane was merging, there was a truck in front of me that was slow anyway. So I just slowed down, and I thought to myself like, oh, you're behind me now, so just slow the fuck down kind of thing. And as if I was better than him or something like that. And as soon as I thought that, freaking big rock hits my windshield and puts a crack in the windshield like right away. And I'm like, if that guy would have been in front of me, he would have had the cracked windshield. It was like so
Yeah.
mother. And I was like, oh, thanks for the lesson again. Like I know, and every time I fail, like every moment that I fail when it comes to this practice on the road, like she gives me a lesson like right away, like all the time, like with no break. What's it like? I don't get any free passes
Yeah.
whatsoever, and I notice them like all the time in my life. It'd be even patients inside my house. Like it's a constant. Like once you're one with your, I guess, guide, like like it's never ending, and it's maddening sometimes. Like sometimes I just want to break like from this
Yeah.
work, and it doesn't come. And thank you. I'm appreciative to the idea that I'm being put to the test at all time. But is it like that in your life? Like I feel like it's a constant test all the fucking time. I'm
Oh
so
yeah.
tired, especially tired today. I'm so tired of it.
Yeah. And like sometimes I'm like, if I had never gotten into spirituality, life would be so much easier. I wouldn't think everything was a sign. I would just think I had a cracked windshield. I wouldn't
Yeah,
be like, oh, I did this to myself. But honestly,
no, I'm
no.
happy.
Like
I'm
yeah,
super
I'm
happy.
happy because like how much I've grown and like taken responsibility for my own actions is like why I'm here.
Yeah,
Like right now. So as much as it's like, oh God, like why are you showing me this in this way? It's like, okay, thank you. I needed to
yeah,
see it. And that was
yeah.
probably the only way I was going to see it and take accountability. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be, because I've been cheating a little bit about going faster, and yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like my windshield is such a reminder, like the crack is right there in my
Yeah.
face. I'm like, am I gonna change that now? I'm like, no, I'm gonna keep it for as long as possible just to remind me of what I need to do. And as well, like,
Yeah.
thank you to be able to share that with somebody, like the insanity of this type of thinking. I don't have a lot of people to share it with, tell you the truth. So even with my
Absolutely.
wife, I was like, oh, a rock just hit my windshield. I didn't really tell her it's because I think I passed this guy, and kind of thing.
Yeah, no,
But
this past week that's been like another lesson for me is like ayahuasca showed me I needed to, let myself feel my anger, let myself feel my frustrations rather than like bottling them up because then they just boil over and then I want to scream. And this past week, I was with my family for a week straight and Ram Dass has this quote and it's like, you think you're enlightened until you spend a week with your family.
yeah,
Um, and that's I'm somebody who like I need to recharge my social batteries. I need to take space to, really, feel my own energy and stay grounded. And like this past week, it was like learning patience, learning to validate my own emotions without freaking out. And it was like I was with my friend too. And, just different people's like mannerisms after a while, it would just start to frustrate me and I started to just be a little bit of a bitch, to be honest.
yeah,
um, and then there was these manatees that like swam up to the dock that we were like at the Airbnb we were staying at, and it was like as soon as I got around these, I knew it was a sign. It was like I felt instantly like calm and like bad for even like being somewhat rude and not even validating my own emotions of like, okay, you are feeling stressed, go take space. I was like, no, I need to keep going, I need to be a people person the entire trip. And I wasn't validating my own emotions, and I looked up the symbolism of manatees and it's literally like validate your own emotions, feel these things, feel your anger, but not don't let it become aggression. um, and it was like as soon as I looked it up, I was like, oh, these are definitely a spirit guide for me. This is a message. And it was like when you feel your own aggression, like validate it in yourself without lashing out on others. And like it was like tune into your compassion. And one of these manatees had been hit by like a boat propeller or something, and it had this big like wound on its back, and I started doing reiki on it, and it was like the most beautiful moment of me tapping into like my gentle side, my healer side, while also still like healing my own wounds and like feeling all of my anger, but in a way that was like, okay, I can heal my anger through like compassion for myself. I can heal my shame through compassion and not have to be like, fuck you to everyone around me while I'm doing that. So it's interesting. Another big lesson for me this week.
yeah. No, I love those. Yeah, you're making me think about like to take, and it's weird. It's like even though I'm shown like what I need to do pretty much at all time, the fact that I turn a blind eye on it, or just saying like, no, I'm too busy, I don't have time for this shit, like I need to do this, I need to do this, but it's like, no, go and take your time, because you'll achieve this and this way more efficiently if you just take the fucking time. And yeah, I've been bad at it 100%. So when you're talking, I'm like, shit.
Yeah, that's how I
But
feel about you. Like you talked about like how everything has a consequence and how like the rock hit your windshield. I'm like, oh yeah, that's another lesson I learned this week. Oh, I
yeah,
should go and think more about that.
yeah, and slow down and
Yeah.
really. But yeah, but I am appreciative to the idea that I have to admit, like more and more on the on the daily, like there, I don't miss a beat. Like mother's there, period. You call her ayahuasca, I think, or but like that light is there, and I'm happy that it's kind of like intuition now. I turn to spirit right away, like at any point in time, and the point, and that's when it hits me the most. Like when I hear the spirit and I turn to spirit at all time, and still I ignore it, and I'm like, no, I want to do the wrong thing. And sometimes it's even like it feels like I'm doing the wrong thing in order to feel an emotion that she wants me to feel. It's like, are you fucking with me? Like I feel like sometimes my ego just really, really doesn't want to do it, but it's her fault, but it's my fault, her fault. And then it gets all confusing. And I'm like, all right, sit down, relax, take a deep
Yeah.
breath. Yeah. Oh man. Ah, it's fun. I love spirituality.
Yeah.
Yay.
It's a ride for sure.
It is. All right. So what was that Sapo ceremony? Like it was smooth, gentle. What happened in there?
Yeah, so that tied into my seventh ceremony. So it was interesting. I started to go up, like my body, like I could feel it rising and I could see the clouds, almost like how Yoshi
Yeah.
described it, which is interesting because Yoshi is the one that like donated me this ceremony. But it was almost like the same thing. I started to go up into like the gray clouds. I saw an opening and then I came right back down because as I started to go up, it's like I forgot how to breathe. And it was like I couldn't breathe. And if I wanted to go up more, I knew I was going to stop breathing. And in this ceremony, I was like, no, I choose life. I already got the drugs out of my system. Right now, I choose life over a new visual experience, over Sapo land. I need to choose this life right now. Whatever's up there for me isn't for me right now. I need to choose this life. Um, and even though I didn't have, you know, a super wild like psychedelic experience, it was probably the most profound experience that I had up to date because it was like the first time I really chose this life over a new interesting experience, over anything else. I chose this life. I was like, I love this life. I've worked hard to be where I'm at. I'm making new choices, better choices for myself, and I choose this life. And I just came right back down and I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm good. And I went and sat down. And, it was probably like a 5-minute ordeal for me, but it was like from that point on, it was like, no, I'm not supposed to work with Sapo right now. Maybe in the future, but right now I'm just choosing this life experience, this sober experience today. And, after that, I think I can't fully remember the last two ayahuasca ceremonies.
Oh, well,
But
wait,
it,
before you move on.
mhm.
Uh, so that's crazy on how similar it is to what Yoshi experienced.
Yeah.
Now, and before we move on, have you ever experienced the thought of suicide in your life? Like, have you ever played in that realm?
Yeah. You know, I think middle school, like 8th grade, like freshman year, was the most depressed I had ever been. And it was really like I was scared of the physical aspect of, death and like pain. And I didn't think I could do that. But I wished every day to be, hit by a car or, on the street, somebody shot me. It was like I just didn't want to be alive, but I didn't want to be the one that, pulled the trigger.
Yeah,
Um,
like me.
so it was, yeah. So I was like suicidal, but in the way that I was like, I know I can't personally do it, but I don't want to be alive right now. and at that time I was, self-harming, but in a way that wasn't, fatal. Like I would like cut or, use different drugs and like stuff like that. At a really young age, like I was like 13, doing this stuff. And like, I think that was the worst my depression had been. And it's interesting. I was talking to like a kind of like a soul sister today about how middle school and early high school was like the worst time in my life and like the most depressed I had been. Because even though I'd gone through harder stuff after that, I was in a much more spiritual place and I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't want to harm myself. I didn't want to necessarily take myself out of this life. I was like, oh, this fucking sucks. Like this really fucking sucks. But I wasn't like, I want to die. Um,
And
and
do you think that it would be possible if ever you would take like mushrooms like psilocybin, so you take 5 grams, if the mushroom would present you with life and death, if you choose death, would you die in real life or would that just be an experience through the mushroom?
so I heard you and Yoshi talking about this on his
Yeah.
pod or like his episode of your podcast. And I was thinking about it and I think you can. I think you can choose death, and it obviously like psilocybin can't physically kill you, but if you choose death during a ceremony, if you purge, you could choke on your own puke. You could choose suicide in that moment and not fully realize what you're physically doing, but it was like you would die. I think you can choose death, and maybe it wouldn't be directly from psilocybin, but I think it's definitely possible to die and have it be correlated to the mushrooms and for a reason. And I think you would have you would
Right.
have chosen death.
But let's say he would have let's say I'd be beside him and he would puke or whatever, then, and I'd be there for him or whatever. Because I want to share with you, I know that he would totally allow that. He's awesome. Yoshi's the man. So after talking to him about that, because I was like, because I keep going back to the idea of like, because he keeps going back to that same place, every single place. Now, either the mushroom is kind of telling him, okay, enough with the spirituality thing, just like we talked about earlier, and choose life and kind of be sober with life kind of thing, or um he's trying to go, because he did deal a lot with suicide, and even when he went to ayahuasca, the idea of if if he would become mental or be in a mental institution, well, the idea of suicide, like it's still prevalent in his life, right? So either the mushroom is showing him to be sober or the mushroom is showing him to, it's okay, and like even if you would go mental or even if you would kill yourself like through suicide, everything would be fine. Here's the experience, kind of thing. And so after that, like the next day, he he was telling me um that I realized that I keep saying that I want to live because there's a part of me that wants to die. And then we had a little conversation, and he's like, me denying, uh, almost like denying my desire to die, like his suicide, the idea of like feeling your feelings, like your anger, to really, um, so he still has that idea, of wanting to die because Peter passed away, and so on and so forth, like where, you know kind of thing. And but I wanted to get kind of like your, I think I got the answer pretty much, but I think I understand where you're coming from. But what's your feelings on what I just said? Like when it comes to you, we both know Yoshi, we both love him so much, and I would never want to put him in harm's way, right? But I keep thinking in my heart like that the mushroom wants him to go through something in order to die, like because there's some lesson that you can only go through if you really think you're going to die, like just
Yeah.
like you, with your mom, like you really had to think that your mom raped you and did all sorts of crazy shit for you to feel that anger. um but it could be the other way as well. So not that
Yeah.
I'm fearful, but I don't know.
Um I can't speak on what someone's spirit guides want them to
Of course.
know per se, but I think it's a definite lesson, whatever they're showing him. And I think he needs to, you know, I can't even say he needs to,
Yeah, of course.
I think there is a lesson there. And I think maybe a part of him needs to die off. Maybe it's not necessarily a fear of death, but, I think maybe there's some stuck energy there revolving around death or people who have died in his life, and maybe he needs to integrate that more. But I really have no idea
Yeah, same. Now we have
with
this small
that.
agreement where the next time we see each other, I will be a sitter for him, and if ever the mushroom shows him that he's gonna surrender to it, and I'll be able to be there for him in case
Yeah.
he goes towards, like, in case the body kind of lets go. I'll be there to be there.
Yeah.
To support. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Thank you for sharing.
hmm
So what's the last ceremony? What happened there?
Um,
The very, very last ceremony after 2 weeks. That must have been insane. Just the idea that you're almost leaving the jungle. Just that alone.
yeah. That one was really, really beautiful. I got to just sit and talk to anyone that I wanted to that had passed away. It was like I could call anyone and just talk to them. I was talking to,
Really?
yeah, I was talking to my friend Eden's mom who passed away, and me and Eden have been friends since I was probably 4. I grew up with her mom, and just a few years ago, while I was going through a bunch of like drug abuse stuff, her mom passed away from alcoholism. She had, I don't know how to say, sclerosis of the liver, sclerosis. I'm not
Sure.
sure how to say that, but liver failure. Um, and it was like talking to her about like sobriety and like her being like, take my life as a lesson, um, and like just asking her about different things from my childhood. What was I like? Because there's parts of my childhood that I don't remember fully. And then I was talking to my friend Gio, who passed away, just a few months before I had come to Arcana. He was murdered, and it was like I instantly knew that he was at peace. Like I had other friends that had passed away, or just different people that I knew that passed away that were definitely not at peace, that had gotten stuck. Um, but Gio, I instantly knew was at peace. He was always just such like a happy, really spiritual guy, but never used any psychedelics or anything like that. And I was just asking him, like, how did you find such peace on earth and in death? Like, what was it for you? And he was like, I think I always knew. He said he knew that he was going to die young, and he was just living with the mindset of, have fun on earth while you can. And talking to him after, you know, him passing away, and that was one of my best friends, ex-boyfriend, and she was like very depressed after that, and he was like, you need to show her how to love herself. And I was like, well, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And he was just kind of joking with me, and he was like, well, tell her I said so. And I guess
Mhm.
that was like an inside joke they had. And I told her about it, and she said it actually really helped, just knowing that he's out there supporting her, because there's no way I would have known that little inside joke, if I hadn't actually spoken to him. And like, I don't know, I got to just call up different people, and be like, how you doing? I talked to my grandma for a bit. I called on different ancestors that I had never met before in this life. I had talked to Eden's great grandpa. I talked to my own great grandpa, and it was just a really beautiful ceremony of like, I'm still here on earth, but it's like I've died before, I'll die again. It's life is a part of death, death is a part of life. And it was just this like divine like acceptance of the cycle of life, I guess, and like
Yeah.
acceptance that I'm here to learn these lessons. But if I don't, I'll come back and have to learn them again. Yeah, it was a really beautiful ceremony, especially to like close out with. Just feeling like so supported by everyone I had ever met, alive or dead. And it was really beautiful. And like this past week, I had this memory of me as a kid. I was a little weirdo, to be honest. I had this memory of my mom brushing my hair. And I go, Mom, I want to go home. And she goes, Lauren, you are home. What are you talking about? And I go, no, I mean my old home with my old family. And she was like, Lauren, you're 3. What are you talking about?
That's
And
so
I just
cool.
said, I miss my old family. I want to go home. And we have videos of me being like, stop calling me Lauren. My name's Katie. I have a brother, Joey. We live in Minnesota. And it was like, I had this whole backstory. And it was like, I remembered it this week, and I was talking to my dad about it, and he was like, oh yeah, you used to freak us out all the time, like saying stuff like this. But that ceremony was just like, okay, I've been alive before, I've been dead before, just embrace the cycle of life and learn what you can while you're here. That was really like my last ceremony. And it's weird because having this conversation about my ceremonies at Arcana, like every lesson I learned in those that I had kind of, neglected integrating or not fully integrated yet, have come up this week so
Oh yeah.
loudly.
Oh yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. I've had like my third ceremony came up last week, like for the entire week. It was insane.
What was it?
Oh, the integration of like me and my ego kind of,
Yeah.
I'm still kind of in it because I was supposed to be in Peru and like I'd be coming back like right about now. Uh, but anyways, um, the ego is he's like the idea that he's the only person right now that I can do work with, like true work. Like this is what I'm here to do, and I kept pushing him aside, you know. I kept pushing, like as if he was not important, as if spirituality was the most important thing because of all the suffering that I had caused him through my unawareness of what the fuck was really happening, you know, but not, yeah, but not understanding what was happening, by not knowing that I, like what you just said, that I am a soul, that I've been here before, and that, you know, I was not remembering. And so it's really big. And like me driving now, like the lessons that I'm doing while I'm sober, it'd be driving, being with my wife, my children, at any and all time, I'm seeing like the lessons in front of my face, like all the time. And my third ceremony was showing me the tools on how to handle that shit, like, and I'm still not doing what I'm supposed to, meaning if ever she's trying to show me a lesson, I'm not getting it. Sit down, take a breath, like really take a breath, like
Yeah.
do the Wim Hof breathing just for a minute. That's all you need. It's a minute of deep breath in, deep breath out, deep breath in, and then let go of your breath, and you'll get all the lessons and all of like you can. That's those are the tools that she showed me, and I'm last night I did the Wim Hof breathing finally. Like I don't know why, but I had kind of been ignoring it for such a long time. It's time, or like not, it's the tests. Like they're showing me, it's showing me like I'm gonna make you feel like there's not enough time in this life for everything that you want to do. And the only thing that you need to do is your breath. So I'm gonna confuse the fuck out of you with all sorts of shit that you think are important, but you know what the real lessons are. And like I'm not, like I'm working on it, and it's been hard because
Yeah.
I'm not getting it, even though I know what they are. I'm still not getting it. But I'm getting it tonight. uh,
Good.
and yeah, yeah,
it's
I
it's
feel
funny that,
I feel
sorry,
shame.
go ahead.
No, no, it's just I was gonna say I feel shame. Yeah,
Well, it's
yeah,
great that you admitted that.
yeah. But it's funny that what?
It's funny that ayahuasca gives us these, these coping skills, or like how to move through our ego, how to move through our anger with the Wim Hof or different breathing techniques. And sometimes we're like, I just don't want to do it. And it's,
Yeah.
it's like, that one thing is going to make it 10 times better. But your ego kicks in and you're like, well, I'm not doing it.
Well,
It's
that's the
just,
thing. I'm blaming the ego. I'm blaming
yeah,
the ego. And the ego, like, I trained him all of this life, like, you know, because I was unaware. So I trained him to behave this way. If I
yeah,
would have been spiritual from the start, let's say, and I would have trained my ego to behave X, Y, and Z. He learns so fast, tell you the truth. Like we are learning so fast. It's only been a year. I'm so much more calm. Like it's night and day. So
Yeah.
I can't blame him. I really feel like it's my soul and the ego, kind of the combination. I meant to be, really, it's
Yeah.
probably perfect as it is, but I'm meant to feel like I'm not doing enough, or I could do better or whatever. But really, this conversation of like feeling shame, and that, it feels great. So meant to be in a way. Uh, but I want to talk to you. I wanted to ask two things. The first thing is like when the you were able to interact with the dead, like was it as beautiful as I imagine, where it's so vivid, right? With ayahuasca, and like you can just close your eyes and literally they are there. Like it's not like just your imagination and there's doubts because of normal waking. You know how for me, like I was telling you, how sometimes I have doubt that mother's talking to me because she fucks with me, and it's like, is that the ego, is that mother? But really it's both. And there's like, I know the lessons, but I still like have this doubt in my mind of like, maybe I'm just going crazy, right? But in that world, like in that fortunate, that was like crisp. Like there was no doubt, right, that you were
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
Um, and it's interesting because I've talked to like spirits like my whole life. Like it was one of those gifts that I like was born with, but it freaked me out and I turned it off. And like when I was younger, I would like see them in my room, I would talk to them, I could feel them, I would see them with my eyes open or closed. And it freaked me out. And probably like once I hit sixth grade, I was able to turn it off completely and just convince myself none of that was ever real. It was just some weird fever dream. And I completely shut it off until I started working with ayahuasca, or actually mushrooms. I guess kind of both, because ayahuasca came, I had like my first ayahuasca ceremonies, and then about like a month or two after, I had a mushroom ceremony where I connected with my friend Bryce, who had passed away. And that was the first time I had really spoken to any kind of spirit or soul that had crossed over since I was younger. Um, but on ayahuasca, it was like crystal clear, no way was it imagination. And it was like after that, it was pretty consistent, like that gift was back. I can like sometimes it freaks me out because I spent so much time trying to like turn that gift off, and now that it's like I'm kind of like more okay with it, it doesn't freak me out as much. I'm not like, oh, these are demons. I can like see them again, I can like talk to them, I can like call on my ancestors, I can call on people that have passed away. So like on ayahuasca, it was like the first time that it was really like crystal clear since like when I was like younger-ish. But now it's pretty crystal clear whether I'm sober or not. I believe it now.
That's amazing. And the other question is like, you were saying that sometimes you can't, like you're not at peace on the other side. Let's say you have a, like you like, what did you mean by that? Is there like some way that when you die you're not going to be at peace, and I guess that just leads to a rebirth right away? Or what did you mean by that?
So my personal beliefs and what I've experienced, um, talking to different like spirits or like um in my like shamanic studies, is basically when you die, you can cross over, but if you are so fearful, you can choose not to, and you can kind of get stuck, and it's like stuck in the middle world, they call it, and it's like you can manifest all your fears right next to you, and so it's like you can
Yeah.
end up in a place similar to like what
Hell.
Christians would describe as hell. Yeah. And it happened to my friend Bryce. And when I was on mushrooms, this was, after my first ayahuasca experiences. And this was the first time I had talked to a spirit, like I said, since I was younger. I saw Bryce, and I instantly knew it was Bryce. Like I saw his big mohawk and, it was pretty unmistakable. And I saw him, and he was, so terrified, and he was surrounded by all these like entities that were like shadow-like, but they looked human-esque. Like they were completely like black and like inky type of figures. And I just saw Bryce in the middle being like, please help me. I don't know how to get out of this. And since that was the first time since, you know, I was younger that I had spoken to any spirit, I was like, no, I made that up. That's definitely just a hallucination. I think I'm just not processing my own grief of his death. And then when I was sober, it's like I could hear him being like, Lauren, please help me. I need your help. Please help. And I talked to my shaman now, Maria, and I was like, is it possible that somebody didn't like cross over? Is this real? And she was like, absolutely. And she asked her guides and her pendulum, and she was like, has Bryce crossed over? And it was like, no. And we held like a psychopomp ceremony, which is where you help someone who has passed cross over if they get stuck. And we talked to Bryce, and he told me that he didn't realize he was dead. He thought that he had been shot and then ended up in a coma and that he was still in the hospital. He didn't realize that like he had passed. Yeah. So we, you know, talked to him. He was furious. He was like, how the fuck did I die at 22 being murdered by someone I didn't know? This is bullshit. I had a beautiful girlfriend. I had a great life. What the fuck? And we were like, you know, you may have signed up for this in your life contract before you come into a life. Personally, what I believe is that we sign like a soul contract. We sign up for the traumas that we experience to learn a lesson, to learn the intended lesson that we need to from this life. If an intended lesson I need to learn from in this life is compassion, you know, maybe I'm going to go through some really hard shit. And like Bryce, I guess, had signed up to be killed at 22. And, you know, he didn't understand that when when we first told him, you know, I'm sorry, like you're dead. And later he crossed over, and sometimes he still comes into my meditations and like helps me with different things, and has just like since been like, thank you for helping me through that. But that was kind of like my intro to what I'm doing or being called to now, which is helping the dead and helping people through the dying process. I signed up for a class this week. I'm being a death doula and a life doula. And that's something that absolutely terrifies me. You know, like the spiritual side of death, I think is beautiful. I think it's, you know, it's amazing. Rebirth and birth in general is so beautiful. But the physical aspect of it, of the human body, either birthing something or dying, where your body is, you know, breaking down or shutting down, terrifies me. It repulses me. And I've been told by my guides and other people that have crossed over that are like, you need to start embracing the physical side, and like the things that gross you out the most, the things that scare you the most, are where your greatest passions and your greatest strengths will lie when you tap into it. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but
No,
yeah.
I love it. It 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 brought back so did I ever tell you what I did for Anthony when he died? You know,
No.
Anthony for our group?
Yeah.
I did?
No, I mean,
Oh,
I know who
yeah.
you're talking about.
Right, right, right. So man, and just on a second note though, like as you're talking, it made me realize as well on how full of shit I am. Like, yes, like, yes, I only see the gold. Yes, I see the black, but that's like I've had so many fucking experience when it comes to spirituality, like in my young life or even this year, that when I said that at the beginning, like I only see gold, yeah, that's true, but it's because I made it this way. Like it's a gift to only see mother at all
Yeah.
time. And so I'm full of shit. Um, the other thing I wanted to say is that experience that I had with Anthony. So when Anthony died, and I heard you know, on WhatsApp, you know, Laura or whatever told us, I went to see my boss because I was all into cannabis ceremonies at that time. And I was all into owning up again, my feelings. Like I was, as if I was way better back then than I am now at owning up to my feelings, because I was doing a lot of purging every night. Every time I would smoke, I would go in, do the Wim Hof breathing. So I would go outside, burn the sage, you know, do a full thing, write my intention, come back in from smoking, go inside and just go inside my emotions because they were so extreme. They were so raw. because I had never played in my emotions. But anyways, when Anthony died, told my boss I needed the afternoon off. She's like, no problems. I come home, I write my intention, I do the sage thing, and I knew that I was just gonna bring Anthony into my awareness, and whatever was gonna come up, I was gonna deal with. I wanted to be there for Anthony's crossing because I just the week before I had done the same thing with my cousin Frank. I wanted to be at peace with it. So I knew I did the week before I did the same thing where I did the sage, I went outside, smoked the cannabis, came inside and just brought Frank into my awareness and I cried and it was the most amazing experience. I want to share that too actually. I've got so many stories. So Frank, when I brought him into my awareness, it was crazy because I started to cry and Frank and I, we were always quiet with each other because I was his older cousin. For me, when he died, it's like, oh man, like I lost my rock. Like I lost my little cousin that I was supposed to protect, that I was there for him and I was always, there for him. And he's done so much for me. He's brought me so much courage. But in that ceremony, as I was doing the Sapo breathing and he came in to my awareness, he showed me all of the all of the times like from his awareness what I had done for him, what I brought into his life. So it was super crazy to see myself through his eyes and what he really was going to miss even after he died, like the things that he was going to miss the most about me that I brought in his life. And by the end of it, it was insane because he was a younger cousin at the beginning, but by the end, he was like way older than me. Like it was like the true soul, like now that he's passed over, like a super old soul, the super old
Yeah,
man. And he put his like kind of his hand on my shoulder and he showed me like how now he's going to take care of me and because I always took care of him as an older cousin
that's
and it
beautiful.
was insane like and then I was all into the practice of self-love where I was doing the meditation again with cannabis where I would go sage burn come back and do the supple breathing and I would think of all of me in the past and I would go and hug myself where I needed it like every time that I felt shame because I masturbated. So I would think of that, bring that little boy in my awareness and give him a real hug from that man, me, the now, the father that I am of two children and a husband. And I did that for as long as I could. And by when I kind of ran out of memories of me like hugging myself in the past, and it was very like recent memories, like 2 hours before when I felt shame because I had been a dick with my wife at the end, when I ran out of memory, all of the little me's had turned around and put their hands again on my shoulder and said, okay, now that you did that for us, we're there for you. And when they did that, they kind of like all merged into my real self, like my true dough, like the dough that I could never achieve. I'm only going to achieve once I go back to death. But in this life, it's kind of like a guide to show me like what I want to achieve. Like this dough, this perfect fucking soul that is always there to show me how to behave and how to be better kind of thing was there and had put like his hand on my shoulder with all of my me's of the past. And it was so profound because it gave me kind of a light of now I know who I am truly and I'm going to work towards that, even though I am that. It's like the paradox were so huge back then too.
That's that's
Yeah.
so amazing.
So then a week after Anthony dies or whatever, or a week, I'm not too sure about timelines, but it was recent in my awareness. I come home, I do the ceremony, and I bring Anthony into my awareness and I start doing the Sapo breathing again. And the first thing I hear is this fucking scream, like the scream from when he did Sapo, the screams from our ceremony, but it was worse than that. Like it was a scream of pure fear, frustration, of like insanity, like pure fucking insanity, as if like what he had just experienced was the most insane traumatic thing and he was like kind of in a ball and kind of like not a mangled body but like an ugly very
Yeah.
ugly, naked body, screaming. And then I just, in that awareness, I started to cry and I started to try to be there for him, but he was dragging me down into this hole of insanity. So I stayed there for like an hour trying to bring him up, to say like it's okay or whatever. And I just stood there, but it wasn't working. And I was just crying, and I could feel myself just going downwards. And I was like, okay, this is going nowhere. And then the idea of bringing, because I had just found out my true self. So I went and grabbed his true self, like the real Anthony. And I imagined it, not that I imagined, but when I went and I touched that real Anthony on the other side, it was such a man, like a tall, strong, like the real Anthony. And I
Yeah.
brought this Anthony to the Anthony that was kind of broken. And as soon as I brought him close, he put his hand on Anthony's shoulder to kind of say, I'm there. But like I was just kind of providing help. I was kind of standing by on the side and kind of doing that magical wizard thing of bringing the real Anthony to the broken Anthony. And I was crying like nonstop. And as soon as the real Anthony touched the broken Anthony on his shoulder, the broken Anthony turned around and grabbed, like just hugged the real Anthony, like for dear life, like for dear
Yeah.
life. He just grabbed that person and he just hold it. And the real Anthony was so calm about it. It's like, yeah, of course. Like I got you, like, and it started to rub his hair and rub his back and just like, I got you. And I stayed there watching that, just that, like the real Anthony hugging the small Anthony. And I stayed there for another 2 hours crying. Like it was a 3 hour thing in the end of just me crying. I was so empty by the end, but it was so amazing the fact that I was able to, because I had just experienced it for myself. So it's like I knew the frequency of your like going and finding my true self because it's so fresh. So I just did it and I just went and got Anthony's true self and I brought
Yeah.
him because I couldn't do shit. Like he was just dragging me down. And yeah, so yeah, that
Wow.
experience, yeah, it was amazing. That's why I'm full of shit. Yeah.
That's that's amazing.
Yeah.
I when Anthony was still alive on our like last ceremony, the entire time I was really, this sounds bad, but I was like repulsed by his energy. And I think it's the repulsion of death. I could feel it, and I told Sam about this, when we were there. But my last ceremony, I shook the real Anthony's hand, his higher self's hand, and like I know exactly who you're talking about. That energy of just like the real Anthony, that
Yeah.
strong man, and like it's like my higher self shook his higher self's hand, and it was just like this energetic hug that was like, I see you, I see you. We're not supposed to like see each other as that necessarily in this life while we're both alive, but like my higher self knows you and you know me. And like the entire time it was like I didn't want to go anywhere near Anthony, like the physical human Anthony. But on the last day I gave him a hug and I was like, you'll always be my brother. um After that ceremony and after he passed away, I don't know if I was talking to you about this or Sam, but I was like, I feel like he's stuck, he's not ready to cross over. um and it was like he was in, that really dark, fearful place that I saw Bryce in. And it was like exactly how you described him, like kind of like curled up in a little ball, just like pure insanity.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you ready to cross over? I can help you if you are, but only if you're ready. And he was like, no, get the fuck away from me. And I was like, okay, no problem. But then he kept reaching out to me and it was like dragging me down. And so I kind of like set up walls and I was like, when he's ready, let me know and I'll help him. And me and my shaman like helped him cross over like months after he passed away. Um,
Yeah.
but that is, it's amazing that you had that experience too.
Yeah. And even like, because in my last ceremony, when I was experiencing like pure bliss, like whatever I was experiencing was just like the purest, amazement of life, whatever I told you that before. Um, while he was doing the screaming and kind of disrupting everybody's Icaros or that they were recording, At one point, I went to sit with him and just to kind of hold his feet and say, dude, like, it's okay, man. Like, you got this. Kind of stay quiet. They're trying to record. I'm there for you. But even when I was doing that, I felt repulsion.
Yeah.
But even though, because then, yeah, because I almost knew that I was going to do the work kind of that in advance, but I didn't know. It's now I'm kind of thinking back. But even after that, I remember after that ceremony, I'm like, hey, anytime you need me, like I'm here, whatever. And he kept bringing me down, even though that I had brought like his true self to him and he was latching on to his true self. Like it wouldn't stop. And I remember at one point I was like, okay, I can't, like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I told you that you could come, but no, you can't anymore. My bad. Like, sorry, like I'm not strong enough for this thing. Like, I'm glad
Yeah.
that I was able to bring your true self, but yeah, I didn't know like how long it took for him to be able to fully surrender to his true self, I guess.
Yeah.
But at least I did that, and a little bit helps, for sure.
It definitely did.
Yeah,
I feel like he had some other like entities attached to him too. It wasn't like
yeah,
it was like he had some really dark, demons around him, and like different traumas to face. And
yeah,
I think like, his physical life, although I didn't know him, in this life for more than a few weeks really, it was like I could feel it like as soon as I saw him. And I'm happy that he's, crossed over and is at peace.
yeah. No, that's cool. I'm glad that you elaborated on that, because even like I was in my awareness, anyways, from what I'm seeing, they were talking about that, like Matt Fraser or whatever. Is like most people don't cross over. Like it takes a full year sometimes for people to cross over, even when they're doing great. Like if everything's doing great, because unresolved business to this and this and that. And some people just want to stay with their close one for a little
Yeah.
bit longer until they decide, like, yeah, all right, I get the memo. It's just like mother trying to teach us, sometimes, after you die, it takes a while for you to get the memo and be like, all right, I'm good. And
Yeah.
so that's cool, man, that you're gonna do. We're gonna have to talk more about that in the future because I'm super curious about that. I feel called to kind of do the same, but right now it's like to focus on the ego until the
Yeah.
next lesson comes in. But thank you for sharing your journey, like of where you are right now. It's really, really cool. And I honor you so much. And I'm super happy that you get to really share with me openly, without shame about this type of shit. Like, I love it. I fucking love it. It makes me so courageous to continue the work.
Well, thank you. You inspire me. You make me want to keep going and like being open about this stuff and really reflecting on all the messages I get. I think, after this week of like hard lessons, this talk is what I needed to really be like, okay,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
open up about it. So thank you so much for sharing your time, your medicine, everything.
It's a pleasure. Oh man, thank you so much. All right, cool. So I guess we're gonna end it here. It feels perfect, and it's been
Yeah.
like an hour and a half too. So it just time flew by. I love you with all my heart,
I
and
love you.
we'll talk to you again.
All right. Have a great night.
Okay, you too. Bye.